From Chicago's Can TV, a look at the week's events is reported in the newspapers, in the blogs and online, and on radio and TV. This is Chicago Newsroom.
Well, hi there. Welcome to another Chicago Newsroom here on Can TV. It's been a pretty busy week over at the City Club of Chicago, a gathering of fiscal authorities on Tuesday. They taught us that every man, woman, and child in Chicago owes $26,000 to get our unfunded pension liabilities and civic debts cleared up. So get out your checkbooks, okay? And that, by the way, according to our friends at Moody's, you know, the ones who called our bond ratings junk, according to them, what we have here is a revenue problem. That means it isn't so much that we're spending too much, it's that we don't have enough, revenue. So even they now are saying we can't cut our way out of this mess. And then yesterday, our police superintendent, taking credit for drops in most crimes except street violence and murders, of course, said that the CPD had, quote, reduced crime by arresting less people, unquote. The guy who presides over all of this frivolity is Professor Dr. Paul Green, and it is a rare honor to have him on our panel today. Thank you so much for being here.
Good to be here.
Also joining us once again, Kristen McQueary from the Chicago Tribune's editorial board and a longtime observer of politics and particularly Springfield. So maybe Kristen's going to be able to help us make sense of what's going on in what should be the final days of this session and the almost comedic effort to cobble together a budget when there are billions in unfunded obligations and billions less in revenue. And Bruce Rauner actually said he wanted that job, and Kristen will explain all of that to us, won't you?
All of it.
Every
Absolutely.
little piece of it. I do want to get to Garry McCarthy, and I want to talk about the fact that our mayor was inaugurated this week. But could we start in Springfield? Would that be all right? So what is this weird dynamic that's going on with our governor and with Mike Madigan? Mike Madigan is holding all these votes on, and he's having another one today apparently, on, what's he voting on today? The millionaire tax or something, right?
Which obviously affects all of us around this table.
I know.
I've been worried about how much that's going to impact me. Actually, it's going to impact Mike Madigan. Let's be honest about that. Every year I have to say, regardless of who's in the governor's office, whether it's a Democrat or Republican, this is crunch time in Springfield. This is the sausage making part. It's always completely chaotic. So it doesn't surprise me that they're talking about possibly overtime session. Staying past the May 31st date. Stopping
the clock.
Right, exactly. I mean, they are, as you said, trying to cobble together a budget, which would be an improvement over what they did last year, which was leave on May 31st with a budget that only paid for half of the year.
So, their 6-month budget. Yeah.
Right.
Sort of like the Chicago Public Schools having a 14-month budget.
Exactly. You just fix the paperwork, take a little revenue from
a little from here, a little from there. No, but really, well, let me ask you this: the thing that we've all been talking about is, of course, this rollback of the income tax, which, by various accounts, was lost about $4 to $6 billion in next year's revenue. Was that a smart thing to do?
You're asking the wrong person. I really do believe that what they're doing now is, as Kristen said, I go back a few years farther back at Springfield than Kristen. Many years farther back than Kristen. Right now, they're jabbing each other, just poking for holes. Obviously, Madigan's doing his left jabs, and of course, Rauner's doing his right jabs. But
yes, of course.
The reality of it is that you cannot. It is so enormous, and you mentioned the City Club, but those 3 experts on fiscal policy for the city, including the lady from Moody's. There's no way you can cut your way out of this. There's no way you could revenue your way out of this.
Right.
So they're playing games. Sooner or later, someone's going to have to make a decision. And so what they're trying to do probably, and I'm just guessing because you could spend a whole lifetime and never come close to figuring out Madigan's moves, but neither one wants to go first. So it's a giant game. To me, it's a giant game of chicken. Who blinks first? And I think the one thing I would say, unlike last year, there's no way they can put together a BS budget like they did last year. I think there's too much publicity.
Yeah,
I think
too much scrutiny.
The City Club has something to do with that. That the coverage, the Sun Times had it on the front, the headline.
Yeah,
and it's really dire. It's been dire for many years. They have to do it, and again, I think they may have to blink together.
Is it possible that things are actually more dire and more awful in Springfield now than they've been in maybe our lifetimes? Is that possible, or is it
No.
just it's just the
No,
same old thing?
No. I mean, I would actually say there were a couple years, 2011, 12, 13, where the General Assembly did get serious. They passed second-tier pension reform. They were making full pension payments. They're talking about making full pension payments now. I mean, for the decade before that is when they kept letting this liability rise and ignoring it and spending more. They have reduced their spending. So I don't think, I mean, financially, we're in a hole. I mean, there's absolutely no doubt about that. And I think Rauner is at some point going to have to look at maybe expanding the sales tax. That is something he did not shut the door to as a candidate. And there are lots of fiscal conservatives who think that's a smart way to raise revenue. But he wants some of these reforms. He wants further workers' compensation reform. He wants further tort reform. And if the Democrats don't give him a little of that, then he says he's going to keep them there. He's just going to keep them in Springfield beyond May 31st.
Oh, I think they're definitely going to be on May 31st. You know, one of the things, and I would only say that you're right, the Blagojevich years, you know, Rod Blagojevich thought borrowing was revenue. I mean, that was simply one of his things. And what the temporary income tax did was they actually started paying off the current pension liability for the year, right? They weren't tossing it. What does Lawrence Masson say? Scoop and toss. They weren't scoop and tossing. You go back to the Great Depression. That is before my time, Kristen. When you had Horner as governor, Cermak as mayor, the city was in terrible shape, so was the state. The big difference today, and I think today is as equally bad as the Great Depression, is the P word, pensions. That was not an issue back then.
It wasn't, yeah.
Teachers were paid in script. Okay, if we have any money, you could cash them in. But this pension thing is, I mean, I've studied it, I've taught it, I've had the people in my class do about it, talk about it, former treasurer Rutherford. Well, here we go. See, I was going to be in my best mood, but the thing that bothers me the most, and I have, for the record, I have a state pension. I work for the state for 33 years.
I have a city pension.
Do you know what bothers me the most? That people who have their pensions now don't give a, this is CAN TV, right?
Yeah.
Don't give a damn about the kids and the young people who are going to have nothing left. They're going to soak up all that money. The big thing coming out of our people at the City Club with the experts is that these pensions, the city pensions, are going to be gone. There'll be nothing in there for the people who are working, putting the money in. Remember, this is nothing but a Ponzi scheme. Yeah. You know, young people put money into the pension so old people can get their pension benefits, and then the next generation, then they get the benefits. Well, they're going to spend the money down to zero. Then what do you have? Everybody gets shafted. But as long as there's a nickel in the till, I want my share, I don't give an inch. I think it's absolutely madness.
What does that mean? That you're saying that the unions should come to the table, they should give something back.
They should. It isn't. Oh, it's Kristen talk.
No, I agree with you. I mean, if the unions back in 2002, 2003 were willing to give a little bit on raising retirement age, I mean, I argue that the law that the Supreme Court threw out as unconstitutional, people, you know, the unions got everyone riled up that we were taking away your pensions, we're stealing your pensions. That bill was a minor, you know, curbing the growth of your pension. It still included annual raises. It made you work a little longer, which is logical because people are living longer. It froze some of those COLAs just for a couple of years. I mean, it was a very reasonable compromise,
okay,
and still
hold on
everybody dug
hold
in
on
and
a
said
second.
no.
If the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago and all the municipalities had lived up to their fiscal obligations all of these years for the last 30, 40, 50 years and put the appropriate amount of money in, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
Well,
is that not true?
I don't know if I believe that to be true, because there are systems where the county is down in Springfield right now, Cook County. Same with the city of Chicago. They've actually made their statutorily required pension payments every single year, and the liability still grows because the demand on the system is too great. They have made their payments. So I just think the whole issue of whether defined benefit plans can continue, that raises the question. I mean, look at how much municipalities are caving under police and fire pension payments.
Absolutely.
Again, they're forced to make those payments.
But they're caving because they never made the payments.
No, they did. I'm saying municipalities have to make pension and police and fire payments. It's the law. And still, they're getting crushed.
They're getting deeper in debt. But to your point, Ken, it's irrelevant what happened 50 years ago. The argument, and not you, everyone uses it.
I understand that, yeah.
you know, if the captain would have just steered the ship a little
Right,
differently,
right,
we
right,
wouldn't have hit the
right,
iceberg.
Right.
We've hit
if I had
the
just
iceberg.
taken that job in
Yeah,
1974.
I mean,
right.
it's over. What are we going to do now into the future? And the reality is that there has to be tremendous concessions on everybody, the pensioners, the taxpayers, everybody involved, and let's not let the taxpayers off the hook. One of the reasons that they delayed or ignored was they didn't want to put money into pensions instead of into services, because in the next primary someone would say, you know what
absolutely.
what the guy
Right,
did?
right.
Those public employees,
right.
they got the money instead of schools. So they're basically cowards down there. I think we all
But
agree.
now that's happening anyway. The public employees are the ones who are being demonized because they have the pensions.
But
so
they are public employees. I don't want to go to Political Science 101, but public employees are far different than private employees. If you're in a private union, in a private sector, and I come from a union family, if the business is doing better, you want a part of the profits because you help make it.
Right.
The public sector, your employer is your customer, the taxpayer.
Right.
And if the taxpayer says there's no, or if the government says there's no money, or we're running out of money, you can't say, well, we're a union, it's your responsibility. You get paid based on how the business progresses.
But they also don't get Social Security for the most part.
They do better than Social Security.
If things are funded properly.
Yeah, well, that's the point. This is
So-
you should have a little music. This is basically a merry-go-round.
A merry-go-round it is. Well, you know, we could hang in this conversation for
Well,
the next
they're
hour.
going to be doing it in
but-
Springfield for the months ahead.
Yeah, I know. We'll have plenty of opportunity to talk about it some more, I'm sure. But I mean, I just wonder about the whole. I just would like to dip in one more time into the politics. The Speaker of the House says the governor has been running around the state for the last 100 years holding press conferences.
100 days.
100 days, sorry.
It seems like 100 years.
Are you sure it's not 100 years? He's been running around all this time having press conferences, but he hasn't written up any bills. He hasn't produced anything. He hasn't presented anything to us. So we'll just make our own bills and we will speak for him and then vote it down. I mean, is that such a bad thing?
I agree that, you know, if the governor wants his budget proposals, he needs to put them in writing. I've said that. Not many governors do. Quinn never did, because Madigan and Cullerton kind of run the show down there and just send you a blueprint at the end and you use your veto pen to figure it out. But I would say Bruce Rauner is not campaigning over the past 100 days. He's trying to push a policy. It may be unpopular and you don't like it, but campaigning is raising money and going to golf outings and holding fundraisers. He's not doing that. He's actually trying to talk to people
Well, he's
about
holding fundraisers,
policy.
but it's only for like 10 guys.
Well, so everybody, I mean, you think Mike Madigan isn't? What do you think he's doing down there, trying to put all of these members on the block for votes? That's campaigning.
Well, I seldom disagree with Kristen, because I really known her a while. But I would disagree on Rauner. He should be in Springfield.
He is in Springfield.
And not going around giving speeches.
He is in Springfield more than Quinn ever was.
Well,
and I'm down there a lot, so I know.
And Blago,
He's
we
there.
understand that too.
He is down there.
Well, they have to be, and I like the closed door stuff, because that's the only way you're going to get it.
Absolutely.
I
It's
mean,
the
all
way
this
anybody
stuff-
gets anything.
Anytime someone says they want, transparency,
Right.
that's just
Sunlight.
That's just stuff for some political science professors to mouth off. I mean, it's irrelevant.
But look at the
It's all for
caucuses. Like, we're not allowed to go into any of the Democratic or Republican caucus meetings, and that's where all the decisions are made. Those meetings are completely closed off to the public.
My guess
so-
is nothing's being said, or nothing of importance is being said. I want to see four guys around the table, the four tops and the governor, hashing it out, giving it out. That's the Jim Thompson method. That's the way I of course, that's when I was down there all the time. But you have to. This is so huge, and everyone's got. What did the mayor say? Everyone has to put some skin in the game.
Yes, he did say that.
And nobody wants to put anything into the game. And Rauner won without using nouns and verbs, and he's governing with these general statements. And he's up against Madigan. And what's at stake here, of course, is the next election. So
Well, it's always the only thing
but he's
that's at
throwing.
stake
But
is
then
the
now
next
there's a
election.
Republican governor with money, which is the new thing.
Right, lots and lots of it. Yeah. So one other quick thing, Rauner wants this property tax freeze. It strikes me that that's just a bizarre idea because, I mean, let's face it, all of us know that our property taxes are going up. That's just, why don't we just get over it? Our property taxes are going to go up, right? I mean,
And they go up Because government continues to spend more money.
Right.
It's not.
Well,
we look at our assessed value
because
and all these
prices
different.
go up.
Well,
Everything goes up.
But your taxes are based on how much the government decides it needs to spend, and then it charges you. So yes, the interesting thing is the Democrats just ran a property tax freeze bill in the legislature. The Democrats ran it. Jack Franks was the sponsor. Every Republican voted present. So they didn't think it was real property tax reform. But yeah, I mean, you can't foist a property tax freeze on local governments. I mean,
Well, local governments are in real trouble, and those of us who've been in local government, as a former, as you well know, a former elected official, property tax. Yeah, I mean, you freeze property taxes. How are you going to freeze property taxes for the school districts in the suburbs? 60 to 70% of their property tax bill goes to schools.
Goes to schools.
What are you saying? Yeah. And talk about a dictate from Springfield. It's all fun and games right there. Right. I think if this is going to be settled, it'll be settled in 2 hours in a closed room with the players. That's the only way it's going to be settled. But the point I was going to make was that the money going in for these campaigns, and Madigan, who always has the ability to raise money. Now he's up against a guy who doesn't have to have a fundraiser; he just has to talk to himself.
Right.
Or
a couple of guys.
Yeah.
Well, bring Mr. Griffin along.
Right.
What you have in effect is this going to be money against money, and you're going to have all these obscene. We just went through an aldermanic election in my ward, where every day I got a beautiful color thing about some silly thing about their opponent, which I knew wasn't true, but it sure sounded like, wow, this person is evil.
Yeah.
That's what that's the game they're going to play.
Yeah.
I just think that the situation is so great. Ready for this? What they're doing right now, I always go back to the Titanic because I think it fits. What they're arguing right now is basically, after the iceberg, what's for breakfast tomorrow? I mean, they're not dealing with the issue. The mayoral election didn't deal with the issue. The last governor's election didn't deal with the issue. We're broke.
You know, I have been all my life virulently opposed to term limits. I think it's a stupid idea. But I'm starting to think that maybe that's what we have to do. That's the only way you break this up. But we'll hold that conversation
That's
for
another
another
show,
time.
Ken.
Because I don't want to admit this yet, that I'm willing to maybe fudge on that a little bit.
Be careful.
Garry McCarthy. Garry McCarthy was at your esteemed city club yesterday, and he said something that I couldn't understand. He said something about body cameras are not the answer. They're not going to solve the problem. And then later in his speech, he said, we've tried it, and they seem to be working very well for us. I mean, is that a fair representation of what he said?
As a person who sees him working out 3 times a week, and he is a big guy, I will be very kind and courteous. I thought his speech was very much similar to what Mayor Emanuel did at his inaugural, talking about the social side of government. I mean, Emanuel, they say, why didn't you talk about the fiscal crisis? Big deal. He talks about it in an inaugural. Remember, there's never been a book written about the greatest inaugural speeches ever given.
By a mayor.
Who cares?
By anyone.
Paul McCarthy yesterday, I think he was trying to show that there is a softer side of law enforcement. I thought the best part of his, and I agree, it's a little confusing, was in effect saying, sort of doing a Daniel Patrick Moynihan pushing forward that all these pathologies of broken families and all the stuff that we all know about, that's what's the problem, and that there's not enough policemen to solve those problems. It's much bigger. But we were there, I don't know if you were there when they had the 4 leaders of our criminal justice system at the City Club. Probably, it's the place to be.
It's the place to be.
And they're talking about
And the food's good.
Getting rid of 25% of the county jail because it's mental health,
Right.
and they're only there for drugs. I almost, because as a moderator like you, I am very courteous, I almost jumped in and said, show me a neighborhood that wants those people moving back.
Well, I think McCarthy probably touched on, his office is meeting regularly with Anita Alvarez, the state's attorney, Tony Prankel's office, Tim Evans, Tom Dart, the sheriff, because they do, I mean, it's not just the jail overcrowding, that has been a problem. It's the unjust nature of keeping people behind bars who haven't even had their day in court. I mean, these are people who are arrested, but their cases haven't been adjudicated.
100 days longer.
Yeah.
So I have to say, they all deserve credit for trying to get through that backlog and do a better job of getting people out on electronic monitoring who are nonviolent offenders.
But I was also mystified by the fact that he was talking about how the crime numbers in Chicago, other than for street murders, of course, are coming down. And he said that thing that I mentioned at the beginning. He said, and it's a direct quote, "We've reduced crime by arresting less people."
I don't understand that.
I think he misspoke. I think.
But he read it from a prepared speech.
Well, his remarks were somewhat jumbled.
Yeah. So
No, I really do think. First of all, I think he's an excellent superintendent. I think he has the command of the officers. Remember, he went through the academy unlike his predecessor. I mean, so he really is. And
uniformed cop who's been through it all.
For the record, I spent 4 years teaching there. My second job.
Did you?
Yeah,
Oh.
out of city colleges, and so. I have an affinity. In fact, one of my old students was there, and he looked old. But the reality is that he's trying to balance the need to maintain order in the city with problems that the police officers cannot, by themselves, solve.
Right.
I mean, the thing that putting all this burden on police officers. Many decades ago, there was a wonderful book written about dirty workers in our American society. Police officers, teachers, social workers, those people that are sort of the DMZ, so to speak, between the people doing bad things and the people doing good things. And the police officers aren't paid enough, aren't trained enough, and it's not their job to resolve all of these. It's not Blue Bloods. I mean, it's a wonderful show, but they aren't psychologists and sociologists.
Yeah.
But don't you think he deserves? I don't know if this came up during his speech, if anybody asked about it, but I mean, the crime stats issue does make the police department look less credible, and the superintendent. I mean, it's been pretty obvious if you've been following Chicago Magazine articles, and even Joe Ferguson, the city inspector general, audited some of the crime stats and found that, I mean, they're wiggling the numbers. They're playing with the numbers.
Kristen, there was you may remember in February and April there were a couple of elections. You don't want to give out bad news before an election. I think there's no way they could stop. If you want to stop crime I don't want to go there. Why not? It's your show, right, Ken?
Yeah.
I'll never be back.
Go there.
You know, if
Really?
If you want to stop street crime, if you want to stop all crime, create a Gestapo. Really law and order. Everyone, bang, you were arrested, convicted, and sentenced on the same day. If you want to talk about the Bill of Rights and all the other stuff and this freedom, the police officer makes Nick Walenda look like a nobody. They're walking a tightrope every day on that street.
This whole balance thing. I mean, another question to throw out that's another show is this thing that I have never been able to resolve in my own mind or at this table, is whether we need more police officers or not. There are great arguments on both sides for why we shouldn't have more and why we should, but it seems to me that we actually do have fewer people now available to respond to even 911 calls than we ever had before. It appears to be true, but of course the police department doesn't let us in on any of their stats, so we don't really know. But, well, you know what?
Everyone's not a law-abiding citizen like yourself.
Is that right?
Yeah. Having 500
Kristen
more police
is.
or 1,000 more police officers, it's like chicken soup when you have a cold. Can't hurt. But the reality is you could have a policeman on every block.
Yeah.
It's not going to make a difference.
Yeah.
One of the oldest
Especially
truths.
if they're sleeping.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, see, there's
yeah.
that's a McCormick cheap shot from the Tribune. The people who want law and order the most are the ones who need it the least. The people who need it in other words, you go to a safe crime area, they love the police.
Yeah.
How you doing? What's up?
Yeah.
You go to a high crime area, the police have a very different role.
Well, of course, yeah. All right, we're down to our last couple of minutes here, and we have not spoken about our honorable mayor and his inauguration, and all of the things that were talked about again at your esteemed city club. A couple of quotes: Matt Fabian, Municipal Market Analytics.
I don't know, a lot of words there.
Said something about Chicago's problem is on the revenue side, which we've already kind of covered. But Rachel Cortez, who is in charge of Moody's,
The gunslinger.
she said that there is only a 5% chance that Chicago will default, and yet they've given this ridiculously low rating. I don't understand that. Do you understand it?
Put it like this. You saw the question I asked. I did a Candy Crowley, a moderator getting involved.
Yeah.
Do they use different analytics, if my new word, than the other two rating agencies? How come your analytics are always you seem to be gunning for Chicago. I think it was a direct quote. And then I have that thing that she said she had the list of what they look at. Albert Einstein on a good day would have trouble figuring out all those little things.
Yeah.
I think basically whether they're dropped 1 level or 2 levels or 3 levels, the city of Chicago has such enormous problems with not only the pension debt but structural deficits. I'm just not sure. We have to maintain. We can't go bankrupt. We just can't go. The problems of bankruptcy.
Okay, there's another question. Yeah.
Create more problems than not. But Don Hyder asked a question from the Northwestern. Why isn't there a team like with New York City or Detroit that came together to sort of like a group of people who were all stakeholders, and then, of course,
Well, that's what Chuy Garcia was going to do.
by the way, they're very upset. The people he designated for the commission, they're out of work. But the reality is that this is before your time. How was New York City's problem alleviated in 1976?
They got a bailout, didn't they, from the federal government?
No.
They asked for one.
They asked when Gerald Ford dropped
Ford
dead.
to NYC. Dropped
Albert
dead.
Shanker from the New York Teachers Union. And so I said at the thing, you remember, maybe we could have the Chicago's Teachers Union bail out the city, but they have as many problems, if not worse, than the city has with their pension. Yeah. Karen Lewis could be a hero. It was Albert Shanker, of all people. They bought up the debt.
I'm panicking. We're down to like a minute and a half here.
Give it to Kristen.
Bill Cameron tweeted a picture from Bill Cameron from WLS tweeted a very funny picture. It's I don't think we can see it on TV, but it's the stanchions all set up around City Hall for the people to line up to go in and meet with the mayor on his open house after his inaugural. And as Bill Cameron said, they're lined up 0 deep at City Hall. Now, I know this is just an amusing thing, but I mean, is there something deeper to this? The people voted for Rahm Emanuel, but they don't particularly want to go meet him in City Hall?
Yeah, I mean, in Rahm Emanuel's defense, there were other media outlets that did say there was a line, and the mayor's wife was there too, and I think there's some interest in her. But yeah, people don't particularly like Rahm Emanuel, and that became clear to him too, I think, during this last election.
And
56%.
56%. That's all you need to know, right?
That's
There's
right.
nothing else you need to know. 15-second answer. The kid focus of his inaugural, we touched on this a little bit earlier. If you were his media advisor, would you have told him to do that?
No.
You would have said stick with the big picture stuff?
Yeah, I mean, if you have an audience, talk about something that
Right.
is the most pressing
Did
to
you
the city.
believe his love for the children? Oh, did you?
Wow.
I'm not a big your inaugural addresses are not really ever newsmakers anyway.
I agree. I think I would slightly disagree. I think it gave him a way to give his speech and move on.
Yeah.
I think if he were to give a specific on the stuff with all this fiscal crisis, he'd still be talking.
That's true. Paul Green, thank you so much for making an appearance here at Chicago
Yes,
Newsroom
it's
at the
always
table.
well with
and
my
I'm
buddy
going to
Kristen.
actually ask you again sometime in the future. Not too often, but once in a while. I want you to come back if you will. Kristen, thank you so much as always. I hope to see you here real soon too. Kristen McQueary, Tribune, and Paul Green from, we haven't mentioned, Roosevelt University, and the City Club of Chicago. You've been watching Chicago Newsroom. It's a community service of CAN TV because it's all about you. And of course, you can find us here on cable, but you can also see us online at this address and watch Paul Green and Kristen any old time you want. Just kind of lay back on the couch with your iPhone and watch it. I'm Ken Davis. We'll be back with another program next week at this very same time. See you later. Bye.